My name is Chloe Turner, and I'm 28 years old. I own a small but successful event planning business that I've worked hard to build from scratch. You might think that since I plan weddings for a living, attending my sister Nicole's wedding would be a fun and proud moment for me. But that night turned into one of the worst experiences of my life. Let me take you back to what happened. Nicole, my older sister, is 30 years old and has always been the favorite in our family. Growing up, she was the one everyone admired, pretty, confident, and popular. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one who blended into the background. My parents always seemed more interested in Nicole's achievements, and I was often left feeling invisible. But I never let it bother me. Instead, I worked harder, saved my money, and made something of myself without anyone's help. When Nicole got engaged to Ryan, she immediately started planning a luxurious wedding, one she couldn't afford. I found out through our mom that Nicole had maxed out her credit cards and didn't have enough savings to cover the big event. My parents were much better off. They could barely help her with the expenses. I should have walked away right then, but family loyalty got the better of me. Without telling anyone, I secretly paid for most of the wedding. I covered the venue, catering, flowers, and even the designer dress Nicole was wearing that day. I thought I was doing something kind. I thought she'd appreciate me. How wrong I was. The ceremony was beautiful, and everything went smoothly, at first. Guests were dancing, laughing, and enjoying the fancy appetizers. I was proud of how it all came together, knowing I had made it possible. But then came the moment that shattered everything. Nicole stood at the center of the ballroom, glowing in her white gown, surrounded by her friends. I was walking over to congratulate her when she spotted me. Her smile instantly turned into a scowl. "What are you doing here, Chloe?" she sneered, her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. I froze, confused. "I'm just here to congratulate you." She rolled her eyes. "I don't need you here, ruining my special day. You've done enough. Just leave." My cheeks burned as I heard the murmurs around us. Guests turned to watch, their curious eyes piercing through me like knives. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to explain myself, to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come out. Nicole's voice grew sharper. "Get out of here. I can't stand you being here." For another moment, I stood there, stunned, unable to believe that my own sister was publicly humiliating me on the day I had worked so hard to make perfect for her. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Without saying another word, I turned around and walked out of the ballroom, the sound of whispers and laughter following me like a storm cloud. As soon as I reached the parking lot, I let the tears flow. I sat in my car, sobbing as the weight of everything hit me. I had sacrificed so much for her, my time, my money, and my pride. And this was how she repaid me. But in that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I pulled out my phone, logged into my bank account, and canceled all the pending payments for the wedding expenses. The remaining balance for the caterers, photographers, and venue? Gone. Nicole wanted me out of her wedding? Fine. But she had no idea what was about to happen next. With a deep breath, I wiped my tears and drove home. Tomorrow, I thought, the real chaos would begin. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen missed calls and text messages from my mom, dad, and Nicole. My phone kept buzzing nonstop. I rolled over in bed, debating whether I should ignore them or face the storm head-on. After everything Nicole had said, I didn't feel like talking. But I also knew my silence would only make things worse. Finally, I sighed and picked up my phone. I scrolled through the messages, each one angrier than the last. "Mom. Chloe, what did you do? The wedding was a disaster after you left. Dad. We need to talk immediately. Call me. Nicole. You ruined everything. I'll never forgive you." I rubbed my temples and groaned. Good. Let her be mad, I thought. She deserved every bit of it. I wasn't the villain here, and I wasn't about to let them paint me as one. Just as I was getting out of bed, my doorbell rang. I threw on a sweatshirt and went to answer it, expecting a package delivery or a neighbor. But when I opened the door, I saw Nicole standing there in her wedding dress, makeup smeared, and hair a tangled mess. What do you want? I asked, folding my arms across my chest. She barged past me without waiting for an invitation. You have some nerve, she shouted, her heels clicking furiously against the floor. Do you have any idea what you've done? I shut the door and turned to face her. Yes, I do. I stopped paying for your wedding after you humiliated me in front of everyone. Nicole's eyes widened in shock. You're joking? Nope, I said, leaning against the wall. The caterers packed up and left because they didn't get their final payment. The photographers stopped taking pictures. And the venue owner was probably waiting to kick everyone out the minute the clock struck midnight. You're insane, she yelled, pacing back and forth. Do you know how embarrassing that was for me? The guests had no food, no music, and no photographer to capture the rest of the night. I smirked. Sounds like a disaster. But that's not my problem anymore. Nicole's face turned red with anger. You're my sister. You were supposed to help me, not ruin everything. I took a step closer, narrowing my eyes. I did help you. I paid for the entire wedding without you even knowing, because you couldn't afford it. And how did you repay me? By telling me to leave, as if I was some unwanted guest. She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt flicker in her eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. You should have kept your mouth shut and finished what you started, she muttered. Not a chance, I replied. You've taken advantage of me for the last time. Just then, my phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen. It was a call from our mom. With a sigh, I answered it. Chloe, I don't know what's going on between you and Nicole, but you need to fix this, Mom said, her voice sharp. The family is in chaos right now. I'm not fixing anything, I said firmly. Nicole made her choice when she threw me out of the wedding. Now, she can deal with the mess on her own. Don't be selfish, Mom snapped. You've always been the responsible one. You can't just abandon your sister like this. I gripped the phone tighter, my anger boiling over. Selfish? I've spent my whole life being the responsible one. I've covered for her mistakes, picked up the pieces, and sacrificed my time and money. But this time, I'm done. Nicole can clean up her own mess. I hung up before Mom could respond. Nicole stared at me, her mouth slightly open. You're really not going to help, are you? She whispered. No, I'm not, I said, my voice cold. And here's a little advice. Next time you think about humiliating someone, make sure they aren't the one paying your bills. Without another word, I walked to the door and held it open for her. She hesitated for a moment, then stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Later that day, I went about my business, trying to put the wedding disaster behind me. But just as I was settling in for a quiet evening, I received a message that made my heart race. It was from Ryan, Nicole's new husband. Ryan, we need to talk. I found out something about Nicole, and you're not going to believe it. My pulse quickened. What could he possibly have found out? Was Nicole hiding something bigger than her financial problems? Whatever it was, I had a feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger than a ruined wedding. With a deep breath, I replied, I'm listening. I didn't have to wait long. Within minutes of texting Ryan back, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hellos. Chloe, it's worse than you think, Ryan said, his voice low and serious. I didn't know who else to call. Can we meet in person? My stomach nodded. Yeah, sure. Where? Coffee shop on Maple Street in an hour, he replied. I agreed, hung up, and quickly changed into something presentable. As I grabbed my keys and stepped outside, my mind raced. What could be so bad that Ryan had to reach out to me, his wife's sister, the day after their wedding? An hour later, I walked into the small coffee shop, scanning the room until I saw Ryan sitting at a corner table. His normally confident posture was replaced by slumped shoulders and a tired expression. As I approached, he looked up and gestured for me to sit. Thanks for coming, he said, rubbing his temples. What's going on, Ryan? What did you find out? I asked, leaning in. He let out a heavy sigh. Last night, after the chaos at the wedding, I went back to the hotel alone. Nicole stayed behind to deal with her family, but something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't being honest with me, so I did something I probably shouldn't have. I raised an eyebrow. What did you do? I went through her laptop, he admitted. I found emails, bank statements, and well, let's just say, Nicole has been hiding a lot more than her financial problems. What did you find? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ryan pulled out his phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a series of screenshots. As I scrolled through them, my eyes widened in shock. Nicole had been using my money, the money I had sent to vendors for her wedding, to pay off personal debts and fund extravagant purchases. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, spa treatments, all while pretending to be broke. She drained almost everything you paid, Ryan said. That's why the vendors didn't get their final payments. She spent it before they could claim it. I felt a wave of nausea. So, she knew all along. She never needed my help, did she? She did at first, Ryan admitted. But once the payments started coming in, she saw it as an opportunity to splurge. She figured you wouldn't find out because you always clean up her messes. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to steady my breathing. I can't believe this. After everything I did for her, she used me. Ryan nodded. It gets worse. I also found messages between Nicole and a guy named Ethan. My heart sank. Ethan was my ex, the one who had cheated on me. What do you mean?
What were they talking about?
Ryan's jaw tightened. Nicole invited him to the wedding behind your back. She wanted to set up some kind of accidental reunion. I think she thought it would be funny to watch you squirm. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. My own sister had not only stolen my money, but had also tried to humiliate me by bringing my cheating ex to her wedding. She's been lying to everyone, Chloe, Ryan said softly. And now I don't know what to do. I married someone I barely know. I sat in silence, processing everything. Nicole's betrayal was deeper than I could have imagined. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I know exactly what to do, I said, my voice steely. I'm going to expose her. That night, I returned home and pulled out every financial document I had related to the wedding. I compiled the receipts, canceled payments, and proof of Nicole's lavish spending spree. I even included screenshots of the messages Ryan had found. Once I had everything in order, I sent it to a lawyer friend of mine, hoping to build a case for financial fraud. The next step was dealing with my parents. I knew they would defend Nicole, but this time, I had the upper hand. The following morning, I showed up at my parents' house unannounced. My mom opened the door, frowning. Chloe, what are you doing here? We need to talk, I said, pushing past her and into the living room. Nicole was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, looking annoyed as usual. My dad sat in his recliner, sipping coffee. Nicole rolled her eyes. Oh, great.
What now?
Did you come to ruin more things? I smiled, holding up the thick folder of evidence. Actually, I came to ruin your lies. Nicole's smirk faded as I dropped the folder onto the coffee table. What is this? Proof that you stole my money to pay off your debts and fund your shopping sprees, I said calmly. And before you deny it, I already sent copies to my lawyer. My mom gasped, grabbing the folder and flipping through the documents. Nicole, is this true? Nicole stammered, her face pale. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just needed help. I cut her off. You didn't need help. You took advantage of me. And if you think I'm letting this slide, think again. My lawyer will be in touch. My dad stood up, glaring at Nicole. You did this? After all the help Chloe gave you? Nicole burst into tears. I didn't think she'd find out. I thought I could fix everything before it got this bad. I shook my head. It's too late for that. You made your choices. As I turned to leave, Nicole grabbed my arm. Please, Chloe, don't take this to court. I'll pay you back. I'll do anything. I pulled my arm free. You should have thought about that before you lied to me. With that, I walked out the door, leaving her sobbing in the living room. Later that week, I filed a formal complaint with my lawyer and began the process of taking legal action. Nicole's wedding disaster had been only the beginning. What she didn't know was that the money she owed me wasn't the only thing at stake. Her reputation, her marriage, and her future were all about to crumble. I wasn't the quiet, forgiving sister anymore. I was the sister who was done being taken for granted. And I was ready to make sure Nicole learned her lesson the hard way. A week later, the legal papers were served. Nicole's reaction was exactly what I expected: more tears, angry phone calls, and desperate pleas for forgiveness. But this time, I didn't pick up. I was done listening to her empty promises. Instead, I stayed focused on the legal process. My lawyer assured me that the evidence we had, canceled payments, bank transfers, and screenshots of her personal purchases, would be enough to hold Nicole accountable in court. The charges weren't just financial. Nicole had committed fraud by misusing funds intended for legitimate purposes. Her husband, Ryan, had already moved out of their apartment after discovering her lies. The wedding disaster and financial betrayal were too much for him. The last I heard, he had filed for an annulment, claiming he had been deceived about her financial situation before their marriage. Even my parents couldn't defend her anymore. I overheard them arguing on the phone one night, my mom crying as she blamed herself for raising Nicole to believe she could do no wrong. But the most satisfying moment came when Nicole herself finally broke. A few days before the court hearing, she showed up at my doorstep. This time, she wasn't dressed in designer clothes. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair unkempt. She wasn't the proud, spoiled sister I had known. She was desperate. "Chloe," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, can we talk?" I stepped aside, letting her in. She sat on the couch, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse. "I've lost everything," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Ryan's gone. Mom and Dad won't even look at me. And now I'm going to lose in court. I can't fix this on my own." For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I reminded myself of the humiliation she had put me through and the years of manipulation I had endured. "What do you expect me to do, Nicole?" I asked, crossing my arms. She sobbed harder. "I don't know. I'm sorry, Chloe. I know I've been horrible to you. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, don't ruin my life completely." I sighed, sitting down across from her. "Nicole, I didn't ruin your life."
You did.
"All I'm doing is holding you accountable for your actions." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I know, and I'm willing to pay you back, every penny. Just please, don't let this go to court. If this becomes public, I'll never recover."
I thought about it for a long time.
I could let the case proceed, knowing it would destroy Nicole's reputation, or I could give her a chance to make things right. After everything she had done, I was torn between revenge and closure. Finally, I spoke. "If you're serious about fixing this, here's what I want. You'll pay back every cent you owe me with interest. You'll work for me and my event planning company until the debt is paid off. No special treatment, no shortcuts." Nicole's eyes widened. "Work for you?" "Yes," I said firmly. "You'll see what it's like to work hard and earn your way. And if you ever try to take advantage of me again, the court case will be back on the table." She nodded slowly. "I'll do it. I'll do whatever you say." The next few months were a whirlwind. Nicole joined my company as an assistant, running errands, making phone calls, and dealing with the same stress I had managed on my own for years. She didn't complain, at least not to my face. I could tell the experience was humbling her in ways nothing else had before. During this time, I also reconnected with my lawyer friend, who had been incredibly supportive throughout the whole ordeal. He helped me set up a legally binding repayment plan with Nicole to ensure she followed through. Ryan finalized the annulment and moved on with his life, leaving Nicole to pick up the pieces. My parents were still distant with her, but I could see that they were slowly beginning to forgive her. As for me, I felt lighter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't burdened by my family's expectations or Nicole's manipulation. I had taken control and it felt good. 1 year later, I stood in my office, overlooking the city skyline, reflecting on how much had changed. My business had grown, and I had expanded into new ventures, including corporate events and charity galas. Nicole had worked hard to repay her debt and was now starting to rebuild her life. She walked into my office, holding a file of client contracts. "Here's everything you asked for," she said, her tone polite but cautious. Thanks, I replied, taking the file. Before she left, she paused. Chloe, I just wanted to say thank you for giving me a second chance. I smiled faintly. Just don't waste it. She nodded and left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I had been through betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation, but I had come out stronger. This time, I wasn't just the quiet, overlooked sister. I was the sister who stood up for herself and won. And I would never let anyone take advantage of me again.